Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar, New Relic Alerts, built to provide full stack alerting and reduce alert fatigue. Speaking today, we have Chavi and Nate. I'll introduce them in just a bit. But first, let me go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded, and you'll get a recording link tomorrow morning in your email inbox, so you can watch it again or share with your colleagues if you'd like. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask them in the GoToWebinar questions panel. We will have a live Q&A sessions after the webinar. So if you have any questions during the demo or throughout the webinar, please just ask them. But of course, if you can't think of anything, initially, but something that you have a question about after we finish the webinar, you can do so in the survey after the fact. And we also like to hear your feedback in terms of what we can improve, how we did, and like I said, any additional questions that you may have. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chavi and Nate. Chavi is a senior product marketing manager here at New Relic, and Nate works on the alerts product, and he's a senior product manager here. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chavi.
Great, thanks, Jackson. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Just let me quickly walk you through the agenda for this webinar. I'll start off with a very brief introduction of New Relic for those who might not be aware of New Relic. After that, I'll jump into New Relic Alerts and how we've completely re-architected New Relic Alerts and added many new capabilities. Nate will take over from there and will walk you through the New Relic Alerts. He'll cover the new capabilities in detail. He also has a demo where he will demo the newest addition to our New Relic Alerts, that is baseline alerts and NRQL baseline alerts. That's a super exciting demo. And we've written many blogs, and I'll share links to those blogs as we go through. And once you've seen the goodness of New Relic Alerts and its new capabilities, then I'll compare and contrast New Relic Alerts with legacy alerting. If you're using legacy alerting, you must have received communication that legacy alerting is reaching end of life. So we'll talk about legacy alerting end of life timeline. And in the end, we'll run through some great resources on New Relic Alerts. Where can you find more information about the new capabilities? So lots of new resources in there. And I do plan to end content of this webinar 15 minutes early so we can take time to answer your questions. And since Nate is here, please do ask your questions in the questions panel and we'll be happy to answer them. So that was just a brief agenda of this webinar. Now let's get started. For those who are not aware of New Relic is a public company. It was founded in 2007 and we went public in 2014. We have amazing customers of all sizes in all industries. As you can see some examples here. Some numbers, first of all, 1,500 plus global enterprises and 12K plus disruptors are our customers. And you'll see Fortune 10 companies like GE and very well-known brands that you interact with on a daily basis, like News Corp, Dunkin' Donuts are among our customer base. In fact, very well-known disruptors like Tableau, Zendesk, Groupon are among our customer base as well. But fundamentally, what I hear again and again from customers on why they choose New Relic is because our platform is easy to deploy, scalable, and we deliver a rapid time to value. Like within minutes, you can see your entire stack using New Relic. And if you haven't downloaded our agent, I would highly recommend go ahead and give it a try and see how New Relic can help you see your entire application stack. Now, let's talk about the topic of the day, that is alerts. And as I mentioned earlier, at New Relic, we focus a lot on alerting capabilities. We believe that if you're not alerting, you're not really monitoring. And over the last few years, we have invested heavily on alerts. If you look at the timeline, we started back in 2007 where we introduced legacy alerting for APM plugins and servers. Though legacy alerting did its job of alerting, but it wasn't very cohesive since every product had its own alerting policies. So keeping in keeping that in mind, we have completely re-architected alerting, and we introduced New Relic Alerts that became generally available in 2016. New Relic Alerts has a centralized UI where you can create policies with full stack alert conditions. And we have also added many new features, for example, more notification channels. So you can get alert notification on the tool or the software that you use or your team uses, whether it is Slack, HipChat, or PagerDuty. And since introducing New Relic Alerts, we have been constantly adding newer capabilities to New Relic Alerts. And Nate will walk you through each of these capabilities in detail. But just to give you a hint of like what are these new capabilities? And by the way, whatever you see here, the new capabilities that I'm mentioning here, they're all generally available. So they're all ready for you to give it a try. But as you see, we added dynamic targeting that went GA in March of 2017. With dynamic targeting, you can write alert conditions that automatically get applied to applications or infrastructure which come up with those appropriate labels. And another great example is NRQL alerts. Our customers love the ability to write NRQL queries, and they've been asking us again and again of extending that ability to alerts. And we introduced that capability as NRQL alerts in May of 2017. So many new such capabilities, and as I said, Nate will walk you through these capabilities in detail, and then he will also do a demo of those capabilities. So, and I have documentation as well on it. So if you haven't tried these new capabilities, definitely go through the documentation and give it a try. So with that, I'll hand it over to Nate to walk us through New Relic Alerts in detail. Nate?
All right, thank you very much, Chavi. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. Get into presenter mode here. Okay, excellent. So yeah, what is, we got a little bit of what is New Relic Alerts in a nutshell. I'll kind of continue on with that. With just a couple of points. New Relic Alerts, just to kind of drive the point home, is really the future of how you're going to be doing operations and operationalizing on your data in New Relic. It's the future of how you're going to do ops. All of our products are going to be connected in through this platform capability. All of the data that those products are ingesting are going to be available there for you to alert on. We've got tens of thousands of customers relying on it today. We GA'd it back in FutureStack 16, and since then, tens of thousands of customers are using this to monitor their production systems. We've got tons of features that I'll be going into detail on that we released over the last year or so, with many more to come. So with that, let's start digging in. So I wanted to start off just talking about the key principles of New Relic Alerts. We've got a handful of things here that I just wanted to cover over as kind of the base architectural decision principles we've used that drive a lot of our capabilities and features that we develop into the future. The first one is really around flexibility and customization, because New Relic Alerts needs to provide that flexibility and highly customized set of capabilities so that you can get notified of the things that are happening across your full stack, so that you don't have to watch those dashboards all the time. That's pretty impractical. And so that all starts really with the model. And so the diagram on the right here just talks about our alert policy model and some of the components that go in there when you set up that alert policy so that you can get notified of those issues that are occurring in your systems. So you've got flexibility around creating different condition types tied to products. So you can have infrastructure hosts, application layer, and client side conditions. You can choose the entities that make sense for your team based on your responsibilities, set thresholds against the metrics that we're automatically collecting for you. Even add runbook URLs. So if you've got content that you have on your side that helps you understand, okay, now that I've received this alert, I understand what it means, but how do I resolve it? A lot of teams are capturing that information of those next steps in wikis and even in GitHub repositories. You can link to those for those quick next steps to reduce your time to resolve. Even connect notification channels. I'll go into a little more detail about the variety of channels that we support and some of the flexibility around that. And I'll also go into some more detail about preferences. It's kind of a generic term there, but that allows us to do some interesting things around aggregation to reduce the alert volume that you get and also group things together in a more sensible fashion to reduce alert storms and alert fatigue. So on that note around reducing alert storms and alert fatigue, that idea is when there's a difference between getting notified of every single thing triggered condition versus getting notified of when about a window of time where issues are occurring across connected systems. So this is a quick illustration here to kind of walk you through a couple of differences between what we call incidents versus violations. So going into some of the nomenclature there, because turns out that in the alerting and operation space, words really matter, nomenclature really matters, because different companies and different teams use different words for different things. So what we mean by violations are the individual events that are occurring when a signal kind of goes bad, violates a threshold, and triggers that event. Well, with cascading failures becoming more and more common these days, where you've got microservice architectures and these highly connected and dependent systems, when one thing goes wrong with a system, it tends to kind of cascade up and down. And so what we allow you to do is by creating these full stack policies and then aggregating violations into incidents, which express really a window of time where a system or a number of connected systems are having a problem, and then notifying you on incidents. That grouping is going to keep that context together of those related violations, send less notifications to your phone so it's not kind of vibrating and blowing up, and you can focus on resolving the problem. And again, that grouping creates that context and that timeline of issues that can occur, so that it helps you actually resolve and determine root cause a little bit easier. So let's kind of walk through kind of left to right on this timeline here. The idea is that when an error rate threshold is violated on the far left there, it's going to open an incident and notify you. And then generally, things are going to cascade from there. And so one example is like the AppDex is going to drop, because if you've got a high error rate and issues are occurring in your service, other types of conditions that are monitoring your KPIs could be tanking as well and likely to trigger. So that'll roll into that incident and will be there for you in your incident dashboard, but we're not going to notify you if you don't want to of every little thing that's occurring, but we will group it together, send you information and notifications about that incident, that window of time, so that you can see it all in context and help you resolve things faster. So I talked a little bit about notification channels. We can go into a little more detail now. We've got basically support for all the most popular services. If you've got on-call requirements and rotation and escalation needs, we partner with the top companies like PagerDuty, OpsGenie, VictorOps, XMatters, and all of them you can connect into your policies so that they can receive those notifications. You can even connect into your Slack channels and HipChat channels if you want to get some more real-time, like in your console during the day if you're developing, so you can see that stuff occurring there and have conversations about it. Or if you don't see a service that you're interested in, or if you have a custom solution that you need, definitely check out our webhook channel, because it's pretty flexible. You can have customized payloads, customizable headers, supports basic auth. All of these things can be customized and then shipped off to you as basically a JSON payload, and then you can consume it and do basically whatever you want with it. And so we want to give that flexibility to our customers so that if they had some inventive ideas or had some homegrown solutions that they wanted to integrate with, we wanted to allow them to do that. So let's start digging into some of the cool features that we've released over the last year. The first one I wanted to talk about is what we call dynamic targeting. And so targeting as a term is really just when you associate a condition with a set of resources or entities within your infrastructure. So dynamic targeting with our infrastructure product allows you to basically take the metadata that is present on all of your infrastructure hosts and use that as the targeting mechanism. So as cloud services and cloud servers become more and more popular, especially when you use it with auto scaling, so you can have less hosts during less busy hours of the day and more hosts during high throughput busy hours of the day. You want to be able to have those hosts be monitored and alerted on correctly. So doing things like using tags and labels as your targeting mechanism is a super efficient way to do that. So one example of that is a super basic alert like host not reporting. So in this, we kind of walk through what we see on the screen here. This is a very efficient way to set up what I would call like a catch-all base level alert against a production system or environment. So we're in the infrastructure product. We've chosen host not reporting as the condition type. And then we're using an EC2 tag called environment, and the value being production. And all we want to do is know when, hey, tell me when any of my production hosts are not reporting data to New Relic. If they're unable to connect to New Relic, there's probably an issue that I should know about. And this is one single condition that can cut across your entire production server tier. So you can think about like how powerful and dense that piece of alerting configuration is. And then any new host that spins up has that tag is going to participate in that condition. So very efficient, very dynamic way to set up a nice base level set of alerts to tell you when your hosts are not able to talk to New Relic. All right, let's talk about advanced alerting for Java. I'll start off by talking a little bit about the difference between an application and application instances. So when building an application in Java, it's unlikely these days that application will just kind of run on one JVM. A lot of services are built behind load balancers. You're going to have a number of JVMs, and it's going to do some load balancing between them. And sometimes, a JVM can go bad, whether you're doing a canary deploy and the code is doing something a little bit wonky, or potentially the load balancer could be routing traffically inefficiently. All of these things are really interesting to pick up on when it comes to operationalizing on instance data. So for instance, if the error rate on a particular JVM were to be going up and your customers who are getting routed to that instance are having a bad time, that seems like something you want to know about. So alerting on the aggregate or of all those JVMs may not pick up a single JVM that isn't able to kind of spike the error rate high enough to hit the aggregate threshold. But if you're looking at each JVM individually, you'll be able to pick up on that. So error rate, for example, per JVM is an excellent alert that you should consider setting up. So that's more of a performance alert. So you can do response time, throughput, error rate, those types of things on the application or JVM instance level. And then what we're showing here in this screenshot is actually looking at more of the virtual machine statistics that we capture. So if you wanted to alert on, heap usage on a per JVM basis, so if one JVM were to be managing memory a little bit poorly compared to the others, you can alert on that as well. So that's advanced Java alerting. Definitely check it out. Think about alerting on performance of your application, on a JVM level, and some of those interesting virtual machine stats that get collected by New Relic as well. All right, moving on to NRQL alerting. This is one of my most favorite features of New Relic Alerts. So as Chavi was mentioning early on, our customers love writing NRQL queries and creating widgets and insights. It's a super flexible query language that can work that works against highly dimensional data, where you can filter and facet basically any which way you want and query that data at any time. So you don't need to think about the queries you want to do and ahead of time, but as long as you're just collecting that information, you can query on it after the fact. So what's great about connecting NRQL queries with our alerting tier is that you get the benefits of writing these NRQL queries that can be very specific, and you can filter down to the signals and metrics that really express the health of a service. So for example, I mean, you could even capture custom events or custom attributes like user IDs, account IDs, customer tier, like if you have a pro or platinum type tiering and you wanted to make sure that certain tiers are having good performance, you can write those queries and get alerted on them today. So I'll go into a little more detail when I do a demo on NRQL alerting, just to give you an example of how to set one of these up and some of the flexibility around it. Actually, we'll just kind of walk through one example right here. I'll still do the demo on it as we talk about how NRQL alerting and baselines came together over the last few months. But for instance, this NRQL alert right here is looking at a particular transaction. You can kind of follow along in the query there. I care about my login transaction and whether or not it has response codes greater than 400. Because if my customers can't log in, then they can't do anything. So that to me is a super important key performance indicator for my service. So I want to alert on that. And so you can kind of walk through and say, I just want to create a NRQL query alert, paste in your query, and set a quick threshold on it, and done. You'll be able to get alerted when that particular transaction has certain response codes. All right, so baseline alerting. This is another fun one. So there are traditionally in the monitoring landscape those key metrics that you really want to alert on, but it's hard because they've got attributes to them that make it difficult to set thresholds. So whether they have a trend, they're trending up or trending down over time, that makes it difficult because you'll have to start bumping your static thresholds over time as you kind of reach them, but everything's fine. So if you've got a service that is becoming more popular over time and throughput's increasing, but you care about throughput not spiking or dipping, that can be difficult because if it's slowly trending up over time, how do you alert on that? So baselines picks up on those trends by looking at history, modeling that, and we store these coefficients and handle all of this for you so that we can pick up on those trends. And you can see in the little animation there, we trend over time. We take into account day of week, even minute of day, and follow along and basically predict the future 1 minute at a time so that you can alert on these more dynamic metrics. One interesting thing we did introduce behind the scenes that I always love to kind of give you a little peek under the hood on how our baselining technology works and how it differentiates us from the competition is, it's a mouthful, but it's our ensemble approach to algorithm selection. I don't really have a slide on this, but I always love to mention it because we're taking some of the complexity that some of our competitors put on their customers when it comes to setting up these dynamic threshold alerts by saying, okay, first select the metric you care about. Okay, now select one of these 4 algorithms that make sense for the metric. And that's asking a lot of their customers. So they need to understand the algorithms, they need to understand their metrics, a little bit about statistics, so that they can pair their metric with the correct algorithm, so they don't get alerted, false alerts. What we're doing is we have a collection of algorithms, because it turns out there isn't one, forecasting algorithm to rule them all. It actually depends on the nature of the metric, and then you need to choose the right one for it. So we basically run all these algorithms all the time and make them compete against each other to see who can predict the next minute the best. And the one who is able to predict the future the best is the one that sends its data to our alerting evaluation engine. So what's cool about all of that, and pairing it with the fact that New Relic is a 100% SaaS company, is that those algorithms are getting tweaked and tuned, new algorithms are getting introduced, and all that complexity does not need to be managed by the customer. As a new algorithm starts to predict the future better, it's automatically selected as the leading algorithm for that condition. So it's very powerful, kind of take on all that complexity for you, and basically saying, hey, your baseline alerts are going to get better over time, guaranteed. So here's one quick example of how to set that up today. If you've got a pro subscription of any kind in New Relic, if you go into APM, you choose application metric baseline. One example here is throughput for a storefront app. And you can see we're picking up on this kind of daily, nightly seasonality over the last 7 days. And we're following along with that. And you can just kind of adjust the sensitivity slider. I'll show you that in the demo in a bit. But what's interesting here is thinking about what you're able to alert on. So at night, your throughput is low, but you'd want to know if for some reason in the middle of the night, your throughput were to spike. So one of these dips were to kind of, in the middle of the night, were to spike up towards kind of middle of the day activity, that'd be an anomaly and something interesting that you'd want to know about. And vice versa, if during the day you have a dip in traffic where normally you've got this pretty steady pattern, that's also an interesting thing that you want to know about. Setting up static thresholds to kind of accomplish that is going to be way too much of a hassle, probably not even work. Would definitely require a ton of management and tweaking ongoing. This is more of a set it and forget it type thing. All right, so what happens when you combine the last two features that I just talked about and put them together? So you get basically the best of NRQL alerting, the flexibility around being able to write queries, filter down to that very specific signal that you care about, and all the cool things I just mentioned about our baselining technology and combine them together. So you get dynamic thresholds on very specific signals, and it becomes a very powerful operational technique for alerting. So I think this is where I'm going to go into a quick demo of what that looks like. So hopefully everybody can see my screen still. I'm looking at a policy here that I've got created. There's no conditions in it. I'm going to go ahead and create a condition. I'm going to choose NRQL. I'm going to choose baseline query. I've got a little kind of base query set up in my clipboard here to basically say, hey, I'm interested in the 95th response time percentile of my page view transaction. So these are every time a page is loaded and you have our browser agent installed, we're going to capture that page view event and all of its performance statistics. And then we can do on the fly percentile calculations. And I'm going to filter down to a specific application that's called Web Portal. And I'll kind of talk through the UI a little bit here. We've got this nice time series that show you, okay, over the last 6 hours or so, this is what the metric is looking like, help you kind of think about the thresholds. You can choose a duration. Generally with baselines, we have a number of durations that can be the requirement here. I generally say between 3 and 10 minutes is really what you're looking for. I'll kind of bump it down to 3 minutes. And as you change the slider, let me bump it up here real quick. I want to focus your attention on the 0 critical violations thing. So we're basically on the fly, as you move the slider, looking at every single data point that we're previewing, taking into account your duration, your sensitivity, and saying this is how many violations would have occurred given the preview window. And we'll show you where they would have occurred and do the quick count for you. So we're able to say, hey, you know, one of the best ways to set a starting point dynamic threshold with baselines is to go somewhere between, you know, the 0 and 1 violation in the last, you know, 6 hours to, you know, couple of days. And so in that, with that real-time feedback, you're able to choose a dynamic threshold with confidence, knowing that, okay, if I save this condition, I will likely not get notified of any false positives as long as my service is operating correctly and no anomalies are occurring. So that's a super powerful technique to set up a condition where you've got these very dynamic thresholds being, you know, calculated on the fly. Going back to the NRQL bar here and kind of driving home the power of NRQL. Right now, I'm just looking at every single page view transaction for this web portal application. However, the power of NRQL, I want to add in another filter, maybe on country code. And that country is really important to me because most of my customers are in this country, and at least my most important customers. And so I want to filter down to just the web page view transactions that are coming out of Ireland. And you can see it's everything updates. You can, and this is just looking at those page views. The signal looks quite a bit different. It used to be a little tighter. There was that one little bump happening there. This is, again, just the Ireland page views. And now I can just readjust my slider. And I'm going to go for, let's see, probably around 1 critical violation there. That should be good. Create the condition, and then we are good to go with our first dynamic baseline condition using our flexible NRQL query language. So with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Chavi to lead us on.
Thanks, Nate. Let me move to full screen mode here. That was a great demo. I'm super excited about baselines and NRQL baselines. How using NRQL baselines, you can write a query, a very specific query, like how Nate showed, focusing on a very on a given country code, write that specific query, and using baselines, baselines would automatically learn the seasonality in your query data, and you can write very specific queries and create dynamic alerts on top of it. That's super exciting. But one thing I definitely want to bring out, Nate showed you the demo using UI, and we talked about all the features, and we showed you the UI of NRQL, of New Relic Alerts. But we also support our customers who are a lot into using APIs, who are adopting code, everything as a code approach. We have many such customers, and we have APIs to set up New Relic Alerts. And if you haven't explored our APIs for New Relic Alerts, definitely check them out on api.newrelic.com, where you can see all the APIs to how to set up New Relic Alerts, how to list what are the New Relic Alerts policies, and so forth. Now, let's talk about legacy alerting. What's legacy alerting? As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the webinar, we introduced legacy alerting in 2007. It's alerting built as tabs inside each product. So for example, on the left-hand side, you see under APM, there's a tab for alerts. That's legacy alerting feature that we introduced in 2007. And what we talked about now is New Relic Alerts that we recently introduced. So on the right-hand side, you see the Alerts tab. That's New Relic Alerts. It's a unified UI where using that UI, you can create alerts for all the products. So policies which have full stack visibility, whether it's APM, synthetics, or browser, all basically alerts with full stack visibility can be created using New Relic Alerts UI. And now that we have New Relic Alerts UI and such new capabilities in New Relic Alerts UI, legacy alerting will be reaching end of life. If you're using legacy alerting, you must have received communication about the timeline for legacy alerting end of life. And here's the timeline for that. But I definitely recommend it that don't wait for the end of life timeline to happen and start migrating from legacy alerting to New Relic Alerts. That's how you can take advantage of all the new features that we talked about, create full stack intelligent alerts using baseline alerting and NRQL baseline capabilities. And just to compare and contrast of what you get with New Relic Alerts, let's compare and contrast legacy alerting versus New Relic Alerts. And as you can see here, New Relic Alerts brings forth a lot of new capabilities and it supersedes legacy alerts. Just simple examples, the number of notification channels, as Nate showed, there are many more notification channels in New Relic Alerts, including HipChat, PagerDuty, and Slack. There are thousands of metrics on which you can alert on using New Relic Alerts. And then there are these new capabilities, advanced Java alerts, NRQL alerts, and the advanced alerts, which include baseline alerts and NRQL baseline alerts. All are part of New Relic Alerts. They are the new innovations that have come up in New Relic Alerts that weren't there in legacy alerts. So definitely, and I mentioned that earlier as well, these capabilities are all GA in New Relic Alerts, so you can give them a try in your account. And often when we talk about alerts, I get this question on, okay, what are the best practices on setting the alert policies? How can I create my alert policies so I know exactly what's going on when I get an alert? So here's a link to the best practices for alert policies. Definitely a good document to keep in mind to go through when you are creating alerts. And below that, there is also a video on how to create alerts. It walks you through how to create your first alert policy. So if you are new to New Relic Alerts, definitely a good resource to learn how to do your first alert policy and alert condition. And last but not the least, then the last link is the documentation. And documentation is going to be your friend as we introduce new alert capabilities. Each of the capabilities we mentioned earlier, they're all well documented in this documentation link. So definitely take a look. In addition to that, all these new capabilities that we mentioned, whenever these capabilities come out, we make sure we put a blog out. You heard from Nate. Nate has written multiple blogs on each of these capabilities. In fact, he's written blogs on NRQL alerts and how customers are using NRQL alerts. There are some specific examples on what kind of queries are they using in their NRQL alerts and creating alerts on top of those queries. So he'll have pointers to each of these capabilities that we talked about, their corresponding blogs and their corresponding documentation. A great resource to learn about these new capabilities and use these new capabilities so you can create efficient alerts and reduce alert fatigue. And last but not the least, before I jump into taking your questions, I definitely want to spend some time there. But our major event, FutureStack, is happening next month in New York, and it's a great event to attend. You'll get to hear from great speakers like Malcolm Gladwell is going to be there, and our CEO Lou Cerny is going to be there. He's going to deliver the keynotes. He usually shows exciting demos in his keynotes and unveils new features. So if you are close to New York or if you can go, definitely a great event to go to. And why am I bringing this up in our alerts webinar is that you heard from Nate. Nate is also presenting along with Nadia, another product manager. They both are presenting a session on alerts. So they're going to talk about how customers move from a reactive way of alerting to a very proactive way of alerting. So definitely a great session to attend if you happen to be there attending this session. A great resource. So with that, I'm gonna look over and open up for questions. Let's look into the questions. So Nate, I do want to ask you, there are a couple of questions. Do you expect integrations with Zendesk for the notification?
I haven't received a whole lot of requests for that, to be honest. So between like Jira and Zendesk, these ticketing types of integrations, they're kind of spotty. I believe there's some a way to connect at least our customizable webhooks with both of those products. I am curious to kind of learn more about your use cases there. One way to think about it is I understand that some of our customers require all actionable items to become tickets. And so if that's kind of your use case, I'd love to talk to you more about that. But right now, ticketing-based integrations are not super high priority in terms of adding to the integration list. But I believe you can, with a little bit of work, use our customizable webhooks to get that data into Zendesk.
Great, thank you, Nate. Another question I think we should clarify a little bit is pricing included in paid accounts. So I think they're asking about these new, we walked them through this new Relic Alerts capabilities. Are they included in, is there special pricing for them?
Oh yeah, good one. Actually, if you want to bring up that slide comparing legacy to new, it'll kind of help drive home. Let's see here. Yeah, actually, we should. Both the bold items on the bottom come with Pro subscription. So okay, let's sum this up. Alerting is not a paid feature or capability. It comes with your paid subscription. So as long as you're paying for any of our products, New Relic Alerts comes with it. If you pay for at least one Pro subscription, then you get all those cool baselining features that I demoed. So whether it's the metric baselining or the NRQL baselining, those require just like one active Pro subscription.
Great, thanks, Nate. Another question about, is alerting able to check the validity of SSL certificates, such as 30 days before it expires to get an alert?
I believe that is possible. And it's funny because I saw you put that into the questions area just a few minutes ago. And so I could swear I read something recently about how to do that with synthetics pretty easily. And I found a post internally on like a super simple script to set that up with a synthetics monitor. So basically it will tell you if your certs are about to expire. So I can, I'll try and find your name and contact information. I can send you a little more information on that.
And here's another question, which I think other people would have a similar question. It's like, is there a way for an alert to trigger a CLI script?
I see. Direct connection between the alerting engine and our agents is not present for auto remediation type tasks, but there's nothing to stop you from, sending those webhooks to an auto remediation service that's on your side and consume them and kick off some jobs on your side. That's something we're exploring though. It's an interesting idea. Getting into running scripts based on alerts so that you can run the script, wait 5 minutes. If it clears, then if it doesn't clear, then notify. Those types of things are really interesting.
Great. Another question that I think would be very relevant to other people on the webinar, on the call as well. If alerts from legacy alerts does not appear in the nav bar, it means that I don't have any legacy alerts and all my alerts are coming from New Relic Alerts module?
Yes. Unfortunately, we've got a number of alerts items in the navigation. Apologize for that. when you see it at the very top nav bar only and it says alerts new, that means you only have New Relic alerts, and that's the state we actually want you to be in. So you're in a good spot. If you see both, we call that the hybrid state. So you've got access to both legacy alerting and New Relic alerts in tandem to help you with that transition. The primary alerting engine is the legacy alerting, and by primary that means your event activity lists and your traffic lights are kind of powered by legacy alerting. If you go into New Relic Alerts UI as an admin, there's a sub nav item that says switch to New Relic Alerts. Highly recommend that you do that. Just read through kind of the implications of that. What it will do is it will turn off legacy alerting as a capability on your account, and then promote New Relic Alerts to the sole and primary alerting system. And you get some cool things with that actually. All your traffic lights are sourced from New Relic Alerts. Your activity list, actually that component updates, looks much better. It's more flexible. You've got a clear indication based on the context you're in of the open violations for all of your applications, individual applications. I think it even adds like a couple new nav items when you're in an application to say, if you wanted to answer the question, hey, for this particular APM app, I want to see all the conditions that are targeting it. There's a conditions navigational item in there. A lot of cool stuff that we can turn on once you move to New Relic Alerts only. So highly recommend you check out that subnav item, go into New Relic Alerts. It says subnav item, switch to New Relic Alerts, read the content on that page, and try to switch over as quickly as you can.
Great, thanks for that. And one question, and I think it's a multiple question, so bear with me, Nate, here. Is it possible to collect all transaction data from all instances as failed, declined, approved transaction? An example is I need all transaction count for the last day.
Interesting. I'm trying to reread this, see if I understand the problem you're trying to solve. So transactions are collected and sent up. We have a transaction event type in NRDB. Those are queryable in Insight, so you can explore that all of those transactions for all of your instances. So for instance, if you if you filter down to the transactions for a particular application, there's a host attribute that you could filter down to and actually inspect the transactions for a particular host or a particular JVM. So you can get down to that level. So if you're interested in inspecting those instance transactions, they're all there for you to check out. Then on your point on failed, declined, and approved, if you have there's response codes on web transactions that can help you get an idea of whether they're failed or succeeding. But if you have a domain specific, meaning like your company has an idea of what is this declined or approved idea, as you're processing that transaction, you can decorate the event with custom attributes and add in this failed, declined, approved idea if it's specific to that application, and then you can go into and set up an alert and say, I want to alert on the number of declined transactions, for this particular app instance. That's all possible just with a minor amount of work.
And I'm loving the questions that we are getting. This is awesome. So another question which I think is asked quite often is, can we set different types of alerts for different users that we have associated to the account, or only the configuration can be set by administrator and will work for all?
Good question. So over the last 2 years since New Relic Alerts has been available to customers, it's the configuration has been restricted to admins. However, that's changing soon. If not, I believe it's already been rolled out with some of our role-based access control stuff. We did some, I know I worked with the team to actually do the work to implement an alerts admin role that can be given to any base user role. So if you've got, for instance, users, they have the explicit user role, meaning they can't do things like generate admin API keys, and because they're not admins, they can't see and access certain parts of your account's information. They're just users, but you wanted to give them the ability to configure and manage alerts. I believe you can do that now. You just add the alerts management role to them as an add-on. So that gives you a little more flexibility to help teams be self-sufficient, but without giving them full admin capabilities where they can like change your subscription and do things like that.
Great, and I do want to point out, we have 5 minutes, we can take more questions, but if you're not able to take your questions, there's a link to our OTC page right here. It's an online technical community, so you can ask your questions anytime there. Nate is very active on online technical community, and he can answer those questions there as well. So another question, Nate, what about time-based alerting? SMS only in the night or non-business hours?
I see. There's a couple of dimensions to that, where when I hear the idea of applying schedules to alerts, there's a couple of use cases in there that we're dissecting and looking to add some features to. One is around, hey, I've got this, this metric that does weird things at night, and how do I solve that? Well, I don't want to get alerted at night. Well, maybe you do, you just couldn't before. And that's where baselines come in, where if you've got a metric that does odd things at night, and especially on a recurring weekly basis, if you do a database dump at midnight and it causes everything to spike, but as long as it's constant on the same time every week, baselines will pick up on that. And so that's where kind of time and conditions converge, with baselines being a solution for that. However, there are events like, I need to do maintenance. How do I do that? Maintenance windows is a high priority for us, and that's the idea that, hey, these entities, whether they're applications, hosts, synthetics, monitors, we're expecting them to blow up because we're gonna be doing some heavy work on the underlying applications and services, so don't notify me during that time. That is a separate solution to that kind of scheduling effect. So we're thinking about those two dimensions in terms of your alerts and time of day. And so if there's another problem you're trying to solve besides those two things, I'd love to hear about it. And as Xavi was saying, yeah, just post it on the URL you see on the screen, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
A similar question is, will the system deliver different alerts to different recipient groups or different email addresses, each of which could be a group or email address?
We do have an email channel, so we have this idea of users and email channels. Users is just a quick and easy way to leverage a New Relic user, as it's defined on your account, as a channel of communication. So we'll send it an email, we'll send that user push notifications if they've set up the New Relic mobile app, which is super awesome, and logged in at least once. Then that will connect that device to their user, and so we'll send push notifications. And if you have like a group, an email group, which can be managed on your mail server side, so that you can distribute emails more effectively and within your control, just set up an email channel. You can drop any email into that, and that's kind of how you send emails out to groups. Great,
that's awesome. Another question, and I know it might be, feel free to mention people to go on our OTC page for synthetics, but I'm going to take it because it has a little bit of alerts in there as well. So any ETA on when synthetics will have advanced thresholds, or ETA when alerts data and incidents will be in insights?
Oh, I love those too. Okay, so all right, we'll get into a little bit of roadmap here. So I think I feel comfortable talking about some of the next things we're working on. We're doing a couple cool things. I'll just run you through the things that are immediately on our list. We're working on getting charts in notifications. So not just telling you about the things that are going wrong, but obviously showing you the time series that go with it. That gives a lot of context. We're going to be working on our condition metric searching abilities. So if you have custom metrics, finding out how to do pick the right metrics, making that a lot easier for you. Maintenance windows is a big chunk that's going to be coming up next. After maintenance windows, we're considering working on a much better alerting story for synthetics. So that includes two big use cases that have really surfaced to the top. Where allowing customer to say, I want to only trigger an alert or create a violation when n of m checks have failed, n of the last m, or when n locations are failing concurrently. And between those two, we think that will help a lot of our customers, get the better signal that they're looking for in terms of alerting on synthetic failures. So in terms of
that was very useful.
Yeah, once you see the kind of those previous features coming out, you'll know that synthetics is coming very soon after.
Awesome, thanks, Nate. And I know we are almost at the top of the hour, so we're gonna. If we are not able to take your question, definitely ask those questions on the online technical community. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll call it a wrap from our side here. Thank you so much for joining.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. That was great. Good questions.